Last episode, we left the overseer of the game being put into her respective place. This was the time when she realized that she was not that almighty and invincible in front of humans. Her expression turned grim as she looked at the golden blood that came out from here. She wondered if a human had really dared to lay a hand on her. As soon as it became clear, she turned herself around to retaliate. But there's no one behind her. Black Scythe was already missing in her sight. That split second was all our MC needed to appear and to catch the angel off guard. Black Scythe grabbed one of her wings. And this immediately freaked the angel. She knew what was about to happen. But even then, she still screamed and asked what this human was about to do with her. She also pleaded for him to stop. The only thing was that our MC was really merciless. He didn't care about her and he snapped the wings like it was kind of fragile. The angel almost lost consciousness from the pain she felt in that instant. And as Black Scythe tore it even further, the golden blood splattered all over the place. Have you guys seen an angel without wings? Well, this is it. With a cold stare and expression, our MC told her to stop being a crybaby. Black Scythe didn't stop there and he grabbed another wing. He pulled this one again as the angel screamed. All of the wings were now done. Black Scythe commented that with this, she wouldn't be able to run anymore. He also asked if this feeling hurt the angel. And of course, she answered yes. It was like another limb was just torn from her body. Our MC then revealed that in 5 more minutes, it would have been her who was asking these kinds of questions. If her plan worked out, she would have been laughing all this time. The angel then tried denying these claims and exclaimed that he had gone too insane. And that was the time when Black Scythe revealed the hidden dagger behind the wings. He claimed that this angel would have stabbed him in the back using this weapon. And because the angel got speechless, our MC confirmed her intentions. But she was still trying to talk her way out of this situation. Black Scythe then smiled and told her that she didn't really need to lie because he could already tell just by looking at her face. He also addressed the angel as Burial. Hearing this statement made Burial confused. She then asked our MC how he knew her name. But all this guy answered was she really didn't need to know. At the same time, he brought his newly acquired dagger out of the storage space. Burial panicked upon seeing this. She asked why our MC had brought his weapon out all of a sudden. She then threatened our MC about blowing his head off using her skill. She claimed that just by snapping her fingers, things could end badly for him. But Black Scythe already knew that she can't use the said skill anymore as she had already used it a while ago. This was also the reason why he got confident. As for Burial, all she could do was grit her teeth. She had no other options now. But this angel didn't just give up. She claimed that other angels would know if she was killed and her comrades will take revenge against Black Scythe. The only problem was that our MC knew that all angels are egoists who don't care for other people's business. And they wouldn't also care if one of them was killed or not. Our MC was about to execute her now, but she tried giving him reasons not to do it. She claimed that doing this wouldn't benefit him at all. On top of that, Black Scythe wouldn't be able to return home. But as we have said earlier, he already knew that all of these words were not true. As for the final offer, the angel claimed that she could give him all the information this guy needed for all of the missions. But Black Scythe didn't really need it. He had already ran through all of these things 99 times and all of the events were already imprinted into his mind. Besides, if he needed information, he could have just tortured her until she spits out all of the knowledge she had. After that statement, the angel was put to a state of shock as the dagger on our MC's hand landed straight to her chest. This right here is a clear statement that people should really be careful as they could mess up with the wrong person. Burial fell on the ground as soon as the dagger was pulled out of her body. A system notification then appeared and it confirmed that our MC had just defeated an angel. He was also the very first player to have done this thing. As a reward, he was granted the title of First Angel Slayer. On top of that, 2 items materialized on his hands. One of them was called the Angel's Blood. And the red rune was called the Rune of Slaughterer. Black Scythe immediately used the rune and it was imprinted onto his body. Back to the title of being the First Angel Slayer, its effect was that it would double all of the stats of the player. Our MC then remembered that the first time he found out about the rewards of killing angels was when he was in his 13th regression. He got his revenge against one of them and the items appeared. As for the Butcher Rune, also known as Rune of Slaughterer, Its effect was every time a target is killed, all stats increase by 1% and it has a maximum of 100%. Black Scythe smiled as he looked at the things he got. Each reward was already comparable to a unique item. He thought that the other angels would have been shocked as soon as they found out that he already acquired another rune. His expression changed quickly as he thought that there's still one more reason why he killed Burial. And that was to acquire this item that was enveloped with golden light. This right here was the angel's blood. It's a consumable item and it could change the user's class to Reaper. The only requirement was that the player should be at least a certain level. In this game, all players can obtain a class starting at level 10. There are a total of 30 different classes, and changing classes is simple. All the players needed to do was to acquire a class change item. It's usually acquired naturally through hunting or fulfilling simple conditions. But there's always exceptions, and that's when changing to a unique class, which is only given to one player who obtains it under special circumstances. The main example for this was the angel's blood, which would turn the player to a Reaper. And of course, unique classes are on a completely different level than regular classes. Bonus stat, advancement runes, skill compositions, and many more. RMC was really glad to have everything back even though the first mission was not even done yet. As he checked his status window, he used the special reward from being ranked 1 in all of the zones. These were the choices he could get. And among these choices, the only thing he needed was the one that could help him reach level 10 as quickly as possible so he could change his class. And that was the 3 times experience buff. This effect will be applied on the 2ND mission automatically. Things were all going really well this time around. Black Scythe then looked at the fallen angel and figured that this was his last shot on clearing the game. To do this, he was willing to do everything that was necessary to make him stronger. After a few more moments, the first round of the mission has finally ended. The total survivors among all of the regions were around 900 million. And the ones inside the zone of RMC were around 5,000. This announcement also revealed that they will now be transferred back to their original body on the other dimension. The next mission will occur on February 1st, 2023. Yeomin grasped for air as he woke up from his deep slumber. He immediately looked around and thought that he just slept right in the middle of the city at the New Year Bell event. His face was then filled with confusion as he thought of what just happened. All he could think of was that he just had this weird dream. This was also the same for all the other people who were present in that area. Yeomin checked his phone and he saw that it was already 5:20 a.m. It was the same amount of time passed in his dream. His friends were also starting to wake up and they complained the same pain from their head and body. These guys then exchanged information with each other and they have confirmed that the same dream happened to everyone. They also panicked as they wanted to know why these were all happening to them. All they could conclude for now was that this was really not a dream. More and more people are now starting to realize this fact. And they wondered if they would be sent again to another dimension on the first day of February. But as time passed by, some of them also noticed that the other people who were around them were not waking up. One of Yeomin's friend named Taeshik was not moving. This guy then approached his friend and called his name. Taeshik's face was then revealed. And it was already pale. The lifelessness of his body was already evident. This was the time when they tried denying this situation among themselves. But as they realized that it was all real, they started trembling. This guy told his group that Taeshik was not breathing and he couldn't also feel his pulse. Yeomin was startled as he figured that their friend had died. A conclusion then came into their minds that maybe he was not able to survive the mission against the goblins. The bald guy then looked around the area and realized that there were still other people who had not woken up. Most of them then panicked as these people lying on the ground were all corpses now. Fear enveloped their body as they figured that only half of them had survived the onslaught. Yeomin could also be seen trembling. Sweat also formed on his face as he thought that this situation was just too insane. It then occurred to this guy that no matter what the status of the people were, they were bound to live equally now. Regardless if they were born with a golden spoon in their mouth or not. The game has just eliminated the cry for humans to call life unfair. Yeomin then tried calming his friends down. He told them that they just needed to make sure that they could survive each mission. He also added that this thing that happened was the same for all of them. So they didn't really need to feel unfair about it. His comments made his friends think of him as an insane bastard. The bald guy sighed and told Young Min that he just fulfilled his dream of being a thug, and that's the reason why he was not feeling anything. As for the others, they still have different things they wanted to do. The guy also noticed that Young Min was not listening to his words. Young Min was busy looking for someone around the crowd. And it was none other than our MC. In his mind, he knew that his errand boy was just there standing near them. But right now, he was nowhere to be found. Young Min then concluded that maybe his errand boy didn't survive the mission. He smiled as he thought that this was just natural because that guy was just too frail and weak to defeat 100 goblins all by himself. But then, something caught his attention. Young Min saw one guy that had weird equipment on his shoulder. He wondered what's the deal with this one and where the hell did he get those tacky clothes from. He swallowed his saliva as soon as he realized one thing. Young Min thought of using the status window like the one inside the game, and it really appeared. Right now, this guy reached level 5 and all of his stat points were placed towards his strength stat. He can't believe that he could really access this feature even outside the game. His friend heard him talking about it and they also tried accessing theirs. These ones got the same shock reaction on their faces. All of the people who survived the mission then did the same. They figured that this kind of thing can apply in reality as well. To confirm this, Young Min picked up one of the stones on the ground. He clenched his fist and he was able to crush the sturdy rock. He was fascinated seeing this scene. It was as if he was still dreaming. And after a few seconds, his fascination turned into something more grim. He claimed that this was just too awesome. After that, all of the news outlets in Korea have started covering the news about this unusual phenomenon. It was revealed that over 10,000 civilians suddenly lost consciousness simultaneously. A clip was also shown depicting the arrival of Burial in the city. Someone also managed to record the second when one man's head just exploded right in front of them. And as the video progressed, the said angel had extended her arms towards the civilians. The next thing they knew was that these people suddenly fell asleep. Police reports also confirmed that most of the collapsed civilians were within the range of 15 to 29 years old. This phenomenon also happens all over the world. The people who were not included in the game have started panicking and posting their questions in social media. They were all confused. Some even claim that these were just fake and just CGI. But one person knew that what's happening right now was about to change the whole world altogether. The first mission was done and more things will start happening. Our MC claimed that this was just the beginning. The articles about deaths will also be flowing out non-stop. With just one night, 11% of the population has died. As this guy was heading back home, he thought that the real problem still lies elsewhere. The survivors of this weird phenomenon were now being called as players. And the cause of it was now being investigated. On top of that, the abilities of the so-called players have been transferred over into reality. Right now, it is a relief that there's still no player with a high enough stat to change things in their reality. But as time passes by, some of these players would level up and could end up becoming transcendent entities. No matter what modern weapons others use, they will never stand a chance against the players. All of them will soon be called human weapons. As for RMC, he had no plans on watching the world crumble into pieces. If he would leave everything out on their course, the Earth would fall into ruin even before the 20th round. The only solution that this guy had in mind was that he needs to control the players. And that was by using overwhelming power. In his 99th attempt, RMC already had this overwhelming power with him. But the thing that made him fail was that he was fighting all battles alone. He needed another 4 players to complete the last one. With a more determined expression, he thought that he already had a couple of people with potential in his mind. He also thought of methods on how he could recruit them already. But because the game has just started, he wouldn't dare to act yet. In his mind, there's still more important things he needs to take care of. I also forgot to tell you that his name in this reality was Ryu Min. And we would be addressing our MC with that name now. Ryu Min then went towards this apartment building. He opened one of the apartment rooms as this was where he lives. And upon entering, he noticed something inside. It was an empty cup of ramen. He claimed that a certain individual ate this unhealthy food once again. Ryu Min proceeded to open one door and he peeked inside. A guy that looked like him was soundly asleep. Their only difference was their hair. RMC smiled as he thought that his younger brother was able to sleep soundly even though he was still not home. The guy that was sleeping was Ryuwon. He's the younger brother of our MC who will be turning into a third-year middle schooler soon. Their family was claimed to be a typical one. But all of that changed as their parents passed away in a traffic accident. The only ones who were left for each other were the two of them. Even at a young age, Ryuman was forced to become the guardian of his younger brother. Ryuan had these noticeable bruises and bandages all over his body. And our MC never knew about these before he regressed. He then decided to start changing things around by turning the lights back on. Ryuman greeted his brother and told him that it was now time to wake up. His younger brother then checked his phone and saw that it was only 6 a.m. But him tucking back to bed was really not happening as our MC pulled the mattress below him. He claimed that they didn't have much time to spare and he would just explain things while they were going out. Ryuan was still drowsy while asking his brother what's the reason behind all of these. His expression then changed as he heard his brother's voice turn into a more serious tone. This was because this guy revealed that the world was now in chaos. As for Ryuan, all he knew was that his brother went out to watch the New Year Bell celebration. He asked if something happened. Our MC then told him to come on out first and he'll tell him everything as they walk. A few moments later, these two were now walking down the street. Ryuan stared at his brother intently, wondering if something bad happened. This was one of the rare cases his brother had a serious face. Our MC then spoke and told him that one really had no idea what's happening in the world right now. This statement made one more curious and asked if something happened while he was asleep. Min then commanded him to take out his phone and check the current top search. This guy followed his older brother and really brought out his phone. He read the articles about an angel appearing and kidnapping civilians to another world. Our MC then corrected him. He claimed that taking their souls was more accurate. One was then startled as he found out that his brother was one of the guys that were taken away. He also found out that our MC only survived because he was able to kill 100 goblins. One was about to check if his brother was just alright, but he was stopped as our MC told him not to worry about him. This one then exclaimed as he couldn't just not worry about his brother. Right when their parents died, everything changed. For one, the only family he got was his older brother. And even when they were still grieving, his older brother took all the responsibility. Ryuman had to be strong so they could continue living. And until now, his older brother was the only person he knew that became the most mentally strong individual ever. But even then, he still couldn't fathom the idea that his brother had really killed 100 goblins. He thought that his brother must have a weak side too. Our MC then cut his younger brother's chain of thoughts as he already knew what he was thinking. Since he was doubting his physical strength, Ryuman revealed that inside the game were stats that improved their abilities. This was the reason he became strong enough to pass the mission. He also claimed that when Ryuwon sees what he was about to do later, all of his doubts will vanish. But the worry in his mind still lingered. The younger brother then stopped walking and claimed that he would not be following our MC until he told him where they were going. With a more desperate expression, he requested to know this information first. The bruises that were tried to be hidden under these bandages then became more visible. Our MC had this empty expression on his face as he remembered something in the past. He then uttered the name Bang Taeju. Hearing this, Ryuan was shocked. Ryumin turned around with this expression then revealed that they will be going to Bang Taeju's hideout. The same place where Ryuan's class's head delinquent was staying. Our MC had finally revealed that he knew that his younger brother was being bullied. Ryuan panicked as he was not expecting him to know about it. He tried his best hiding it from him. This was because he didn't want to cause any unnecessary trouble for his older brother who was already having a hard time. But the burden really lies on Ryumin. He was constantly trying to apologize to his younger brother because he had let this situation happen. His past self really had no idea that this was happening. He was too caught up in being bullied himself and juggling his studies and work at the same time. The first time he learned about the truth was after returning from his very first round. Our MC had spent the day sleeping as he was traumatized from his battle against the goblins. That day, Ryuan went outside to go somewhere. The next thing our MC knew was that his phone was ringing non-stop. He reluctantly got up and answered the call, and it was about Ryuwon. His eyes widened in shock as the person at the other side of the call told him that she should immediately go to the hospital. That same day, he rushed as he found out that his brother got involved in an incident. Ryuan came back to their house alive, but he was already blind from the beating he got from Taijayu. RMC had regretted that day and blamed himself for being too weak and foolish. He was not able to protect his only family in this world. But ever since he regressed, he changed Ryuan's fate and saved him in every single timeline. He promised that no one would ever be able to hurt him again. Meanwhile, at this abandoned factory near their neighborhood, someone was being beat up. One person who had this blonde hair claimed that these 3 individuals that were in front of him failed to bring him 200,000 won each. And because their bodies hurt too much, they did not even have the strength to give out their reasons. This then resulted in this person continuing what he had been doing. There were also 3 other men who were just there standing and watched how their friend taught them some lessons. They thought that Taijayu was just too ruthless. One person claimed that even the students from the higher years didn't dare to mess with him. And that's the reason they shouldn't get on his bad side. Taijayu then commented that these guys were all useless as they failed his request. The money that he had expected to get from them was allotted towards a motorcycle he had been eyeing for a long time. He then approached the other 3 and asked them if they knew some ways to get some money. These guys then started brainstorming. But providing an easy way of having money would be really difficult. Until this guy thought of something. He then suggested that Taijayu should ask some money to his personal errand boy, the tall one with curly hair. Taijayu then smiled as he remembered Ryuan. He claimed that he was already planning on calling him today as he will be celebrating the new year with him. These guys then teased Taijayu and suggested that he could just rob him blindly. But Taijayu revealed that Ryuan was practically homeless. He added that his errand boy wouldn't be able to bring him any money even if he beat him up. His house also looked worn down. Hearing this situation then disappointed these 3. They kind of felt bad, especially when they found out that Ryuan didn't even have parents anymore. Taijayu continued telling them that the only family that boy has was his older brother. But then, Taijayu stopped talking as he fixed his gaze onto something. Turns out, Ryuan and RMC have finally arrived in this abandoned warehouse. Taijayu smiled as he realized that there's really nothing to be afraid of, especially with Ryuan's presence. He then approached Ryuan and told him that they were just speaking about him right now. But in an instant, this guy's mood changed and tried intimidating Ryuan. This guy then immediately apologized while his older brother was standing beside him. Taijayu noticed RMC's presence and wondered about his identity. He thought that his face was kinda annoying him a bit. He then addressed Ryuan and asked who's this person he came with. And because he was a little bit scared of Taijayu, he couldn't even answer him straight. RMC then spoke and introduced himself as Ryuan's older brother. Taijayu got annoyed because he specifically told Ryuan to never snitch on him. He then warned him that he would now be teaching his older brother a lesson as well. This fat guy then gave a look towards one of his minions. These 3 immediately walked and approached RMC's direction. They asked him if he was somewhat good at fighting. Ryuman just stood there while waiting for these guys to come closer. One of them even teased him for being a little bit shorter than his younger brother. But this stopped immediately as the guy met with Ryuman's fist. The other guys were startled because their friend got defeated just by 1 punch. This one tried to get revenge and charged right through. The only problem was that his attacks were always missing. RMC had enough of it, so he counterattacked. And it was a clean hit. The thud was then sent flying towards these metallic drums. As for the other one, he tried charging in as well. But as expected, a quick punch was given to his face. The 3 minions were now on the ground and were struggling to get up. Meanwhile, Taijayu still had this sinister smile with him. He claimed that this scene was too trashy. In his mind, Ryuman may have learned some boxing skills. But he wondered if that was already enough to fight against him. He then walked towards them and praised Ryuman for winning against his minions using some boxing skills. But as he stood in front of RMC, this one claimed that it seemed that he didn't learn that physicality is also very important in boxing. Ryuman just smiled as this person in front of him still had no idea what just happened around the world. Taijayu got curious, so he asked about it. But Ryuman just scoffed off. Having his question being ignored made this guy furious. He then charged a punch towards RMC. And as usual, these normal punches have no chance of hitting a player like him. Taijayu continued throwing these punches. He was getting annoyed the more he tried to hit him. His eyesight was already getting blurry from the exhaustion he was feeling. All of the punches he threw didn't hit his target. He also wondered what was happening as he couldn't even land anything. As for RMC, he charged his fist with this blue aura. He then commented that if Taijayo had been watching the news, he wouldn't dare to fight against him. After that statement, Ryumen's punch landed straight to this fatso's face. Again kids, you should never bully someone unless you want to experience these kinds of paybacks. Even with Taijayo's heavy body, RMC was still able to send him a few meters back. But it turned out to be not enough to make this guy unconscious. Taijayo then rushed towards Ryumen to have his counterattack. But he was not able to hit anything. The punch was thrown in this empty space. This guy wondered where his target went, and then right at the side of his face, a bright light appeared again. Another punch landed and he's not able to react. Even if he was clearly at a disadvantage, Taijayo was still claiming that RMC has no match for him. He then tried stopping the blood that was coming from his mouth, and then his tooth fell. This made him furious and shouted that he would make sure that he'll kill Ryumen. The fatso tried landing another punch, but it was easily evaded. RMC then grabbed his hand and directed it to another direction. This caused Taijayo to lose his balance and receive another barrage of attacks. And while this was all happening, the other guys who were being bullied by Taijayo were watching. This guy then thought that maybe Ryumen was targeting his face on purpose. He looked at his opponent and saw his smug and confident face. Taijayo was now wishing to land a hit on this guy even once. He rushed again towards Ryumen. He already had this struggling face with him while saying the word please. But then, a powerful kick landed. Taijayo was sent flying towards the wall. This guy was already at his limit. He didn't have enough stamina to sustain this fight. On top of that, the attacks that he had been receiving were not easy to take. With a more annoyed expression, RMC asked this bully if he was feeling hurt. Ryumen had recalled the day when he saw his younger brother blinded. And even with all the regressions he had all these times, that was one of the scenes that he could never forget. The fatso was now asking RMC not to get any closer to him. He protected his neck from another kick and pleaded for Ryumen to stop. But then, all RMC did was to hold his hand, which made Taijayo confused. Ryumen smiled, but right now, his eyes were filled with terror. He exclaimed that this was the very same reason that he shouldn't have messed with his little bro. A streak of pain was felt after that statement. It was so sudden that it made this guy just stare at it. After a few seconds, the pain finally registered to his brain and he screamed loudly. Multiple fingers were now broken. And while he was still crying for the broken ones, RMC grabbed his other hand. Taijayo's eyes were filled with fear. He repeatedly screamed the word no. Seeing this kind of scene also made Taijayo's minions run away. They knew that they would be in a lot more trouble if they stayed. Ryumen also turned his head around because he didn't want to see what his brother was doing to Taijayo. RMC warned this guy again if he would mess with his younger brother. I think this was more than enough lesson for today. Taijayo was already regretting his decisions in life. All of his fingers got broken today. Hearing him confirming it made Ryumen smile. But he still has that creepy smile on his face. He then grabbed Taijayo's other arm and broke it once more. He said that he needed to make sure just in case this fatso thought of getting some kind of revenge. A loud scream was then heard all throughout the neighborhood. After that encounter with Taijayo, the two brothers casually walked out of the scene. Ryumen asked his older brother how he had done that. He thought that maybe he learned some kind of martial arts or something. But RMC denied this and told him that it was still because he became a player. The stats can be used to enhance their abilities in real life as well. And to really make his brother believe it, Ryumen tried summoning the weapon that he got last round. A golden bright light emerged and slowly took form. Ryumen was startled as a dark and sharp dagger really materialized. This guy was now beaming with amazement. Ryumen also added that all players could summon their weapons like this. And that's the time when Ryumen realized that the reason why his brother was moving too fast was because of the same thing. He didn't even have a hard time dodging all of those attacks. RMC revealed that he was able to move like that because his dex stat was around 11. Normal people only have around 3 and athletes are around 10. Ryumen asked what happens when his brother levels up more, but RMC pretended that he didn't know anything as he hadn't reached that point yet. This guy was now willing to lie about this information because of what happened in his previous transgression. Back then at his 11th transgression, he told his younger brother that he was a regressor. and this has put Ryuan in danger. Some players kidnapped him for the sake of controlling our MC. Even though he was able to save him that time, he wouldn't want Ryuan to experience that kind of trauma again. While staring at his brother, Ryuman thought that he should prepare more on protecting him against other players. To start things off, he asked this guy if he would want to have breakfast at the convenience store. Ryuan gladly accepted the invitation, so they went inside the QS24 shop. The younger brother called the attention of Ryuman as he was heading towards a different direction. He pointed out that the cup noodles were over that direction. But our MC headed towards the ATM first to withdraw some money. While clicking the buttons, he thought that this was all he had saved until now. It was a total of 133,201. This was only around $100. Ryuman withdrew 100,001. Ryuan was shocked to see that his brother withdrew so much money. This was the reality that these two brothers have lived a hard life. Our MC just told him that he would need it for something later. Meanwhile, he asked Ryuan what he would want to eat. This guy hesitated on telling what he liked because all of the food in this area was expensive. But his older brother assured him that he could get all the food that he wanted. This was Ryuman's way of making up for him because all he had last night was just a cup of noodles. Even then, he was still hesitating because they might end up having no money for the upcoming days. When all things were sorted out, Ryuan got this chili pork belly. He claimed that he really wanted to eat this for a long time now. And the happiness on his face could already be seen. This made our MC smile, and then he told Ryuan that they should eat Hanu beef sometime and order it. Hearing this made Ryuan feel awkward again. He told his older brother that this chili pork belly was more than enough for him. Meanwhile, in this guy's mind, in a few more days they could already eat whatever they want. After a few moments, the two were now eating their breakfast. The pork belly really looked delicious. Ryuan then took his first bite. His face was glowing because of how tasty it was. And while they were eating, Ryuman stood up and told his younger brother that he just needed to do something important. Ryuan just stared at his brother and checked where he was going. A few seconds later, our MC came back with this ball pen in his hand. Ryuan was startled as he saw that his brother just bought a lot of Nato tickets. All of the remaining money that they had was spent on buying 20 tickets. The younger brother was really shocked as that would total to 100,001. But while this guy was panicking, our MC just continued to check all the numbers that he could remember. He commanded Ryuan to just wait and see. Ryuan got more confused as he saw what his brother was doing with the tickets. Our MC just picked the same numbers over and over again. He then smiled and revealed that the reason why he did this was because these were the winning numbers. If I would also be a regressor, I would surely do the same. Later that night, the two were back to their apartment. Ryuan was glued to his phone as he was watching the Nato draw for that day. This guy was even biting his nails because he was too nervous. He thought that they may have just wasted 100,001. The drawing of numbers then started. Ryuman scolded his younger brother about this habit. But as the host announced the lucky numbers, Ryuan stopped. The first number was 3, then 8. The third number is 9, then 38. All of the numbers were the same ones that his brother had picked a while ago. And after a few more seconds, the screen had shown all the final 6 lucky numbers. They were 3, 18, 9, 38, 21, and 1. Our MC didn't even need the bonus number because all of the first 6 were correct. Ryuan then exclaimed that this thing was insane. He can't believe that his brother was indeed right about taking some Nato tickets. His eyes were slowly being filled with tears. He even asked his brother to pinch him because he thought this was just a dream. But our MC just smiled at his brother and confirmed that this was all real. Ryuman then teased him and asked if he would prefer this thing to be just a dream. A few more confirmations were needed to really make Ryuan believe it. He then stood up and raised the tickets that they bought. He shouted at the top of his lungs as he was just too happy. But his celebration was cut short as our MC advised him to keep quiet. Their neighbors might hear him. Ryuman was just too happy to see his younger brother like this. He thought that he had the same reaction the first time he had bought the Nato tickets. He also screamed and celebrated the whole night. But as he regressed over and over again, this became the kind of annual event that he was obliged to do. This was all because he would eventually need a lot of money. Having the population cut off to 90% in just one night had really affected the economy of all the countries all over the world. And soon, item trade between players will also become available, which will all be done with a cash basis. Ryuan then asked his brother how much money they would get after exchanging all the tickets, and it was answered with an unsure response. All RMC cared about was this amount of money will be enough for them to shake the world. The next day, Ryuman went in front of the Nonghya Bank building. Since he had done this a lot of times, him walking towards the teller didn't make him nervous at all. He then approached this individual and casually told him that he came in here to collect the Nato first place prize. Hearing this statement immediately made this guy congratulate RMC. But as he stared at Ryuman even further, he thought that this guy looked like a high school student. He then asked RMC about the store where he purchased the ticket. And he answered it by saying QS24, Yonghui branch. His answer made this guy startled. He then remembered what his colleague had shared to him about the number of tickets that had won this round. There were 115 of them. This guy claimed that what made it even crazier was that all 100 tickets were bought inside one store. He then got the idea that only one person had bought all of the tickets that day. Regardless of the circumstance, he was advised that whoever would claim the winnings from this store, he or she should be treated like a VVIP. This guy was then cut off by RMC as he was seen lost in his thoughts. He quickly apologized and asked for Ryuman to just wait for a while. A few moments later, another person came in and he greeted RMC. He introduced himself as Gwon Juno, the president of the Nonghya Bank. The president of the bank personally greeted RMC because he was the one who won multiple Nato tickets. He also congratulated him in the process. Ryuman was then invited towards another place more quiet and was asked to follow the president. President Juno led him towards this room where the lottery ticket business team were placed. They entered the room and were greeted by a lady immediately. This one wondered who this guy was beside the president. She thought that maybe he was his son. But her question was immediately answered as the president introduced Ryuman as one of their VVIP who came in to claim his prize. He also told the lady that she should make him comfortable at all costs. The employee got more nervous upon learning that this guy just won 100 Nato tickets in one go. She then composed herself and decided to stay calm. After that, she offered Ryuman to sit first. She also asked him if he wanted to drink anything, but all RMC wanted was to get his winning prize right away. As part of the process, she will be confirming the Nato tickets first. Ryuman quickly handed her the tickets. There were really a lot of them, and while inspecting them, this lady couldn't help but think that this was too absurd. This was the very first time she had encountered anything like this. She even thinks that maybe this guy could see the future. After a few moments, she validated them and told RMC that they were all real. Ryuman then asked her how much he would be receiving, and just thinking about the number made her freeze. RMC patiently waited for her response. And it was revealed to be roughly 22.5 billion won. That's over $16 million. A perfect example of rags to riches, folks. After taxes, RMC was able to take home a whopping 15 billion won. Everything happened quickly after he had collected his reward. Ryuman got busy buying a new place for them to live in. That evening, he also opened a stock trading account. Around this time of the year, Bitcoin was expected to go up by 500%, so he planned on investing in stocks after increasing his money with Bitcoin. A few days after, these two have already talked about their future plans. Ryuan saw some pictures of their new house. He claimed that he only saw this kind of big and expensive houses in photos. But one thing has bugged Ryuan, and that was the fact his brother preferred to just rent this house instead of buying it, even though they have more than to pay it in cash. It was then revealed to him that they didn't have any money anymore. His ever so intelligent and wise older brother has invested everything to Bitcoin. He allotted all 14 million won. Ryuman was part of the Deegans. And that statement made his brother act like a cartoon character. He froze and was not able to respond to anything. Ryuman then assured him that he just had to trust him as he already knew some things. This guy also prepared some kind of backup plan in case things went south. He revealed that he still has 4 sets of numbers that he saw in his dream. And he could just buy tickets again. Ryuan's eyes glittered as he realized that he had only seen people dreaming about lucky numbers on TV. He didn't even think they were true. He then shook his older brother and told him not to forget those numbers at all cost. In Ryuman's mind, he couldn't forget those numbers even if he wanted to because he had already done this multiple times. After that, this older brother told Ryuman that they should now go to lunch and be ready to leave. This confused him and asked Ryuman where they would be going. This guy then smiled and revealed that today was the day they will be moving in. Meanwhile, somewhere in this random place, a punch just landed on a wall. It's so powerful that it even created cracks all over the point of impact. This attack was from Young Min. He smiled as he thought that putting all of his stat points in strength was really the best choice. On top of that, the rune that he got from the angel was the rune of strength. This allowed him to have his strength stat to be doubled in value, resulting on him having this kind of power. As he stared at the cracks that he made on the wall, he thought that even Mike Tyson would be jealous after seeing a punch this strong. Young Min grew more ecstatic as he thought that he should try using his newfound power in an actual fight. Later that day, the guy that wished to become a thug came knocking outside Ryuman's house. Young Min was already becoming annoyed because no one was answering. His calls were also not being seen. His gut feeling tells him that his errand boy was still alive. He then remembered the night when he saw Ryumin before the New Year event. He thought that he would really never let this thing go, especially when our MC stared at him like he was just a fly. The anger that he was feeling grew more as he remembered that memory. He claimed that he would now be killing him for sure. In his mind, even if Ryumin became a player, that cowardly errand boy would still be weak and needed to be taught a lesson. Young Men thought that our MC would be naturally hiding inside his house. But even with these aggressive knocks, no one was answering. He suddenly stopped as he thought of a plan. He leaned towards the door and purposely commented that since Ryumin was not inside, he would go for now. Young Min was now waiting to hear even just one breath coming from the inside. He was already planning to destroy the door instantly. But his attention was then shifted towards this old man who asked him what he was doing in front of his neighbor's door. This guy really had this rough attitude and asked the old man why he would care. Young Min wondered if this old man was the landlord or something. And then this individual confirmed it. He was really indeed the landlord. The old man then asked Young Min if he was there to meet a friend. And by getting this convenient alibi, he agreed and pretended to be our MC's friend. Young Min even asked if the landlord could open the door for him. As for his reason, he lost contact with his friend, so he came in here to check what happened to him. But then, the old man revealed that Young Min just got left behind by this friend of his. The landlord added that the room was empty now and the student that used to live there moved somewhere else. The only problem was that he had no idea where. This kind of situation then made Young Min even more furious. He thought that Ryumin ran without saying anything. Meanwhile, the topic of their conversation was now standing in front of this elegant and tall skyscraper. Ryumin commented that it was just too tall. This guy even got amazed as they entered the building using a rotating door. He also watched his older brother get the special entry cards issued to the owners of the building. His amazement grew more as he saw a security guard confirm their identification. This was his first time after all. While they were inside the elevator, Ryuin added that this place was just too amazing. The place that they will be calling their home now was at the 43rd floor of the building. These two arrived at the place and they were greeted by this spacious place. All of the things inside were also brand new. Ryuin also found out that this place was over 330 square meters. As they checked all the areas of this place, Ryuin commented that this place might be just too big for just the two of them. The contract for the place was 500 million won in deposits, and 22 million won per month. That price was over 16,000 US dollars. And hearing this made Ryuin lose all of his strength. He remembered the time when they were already worrying about spending 5,000 won on a convenience store. The younger brother then suggested that they should just get a much cheaper house. But our MC disagreed. He revealed that the more they spent, the better the security. And that's all that matters right now. And that was because every first of the month, players fall under narcolepsy, and this period of time is the most vulnerable for all players. Natural disasters would really be a threat. On top of that, there had been instances that assassins were hired by other players, and so, when the time comes, players would need to be in a really safe place. Ryumin knew that no matter how strong the player is inside the game, everything will end if they die in real life. After checking all the parts of the house, Ryumin asked his younger brother if he really liked it here. And his answer was yes. RMC then commented that he was happy because Ryuan liked it. But looking at his older brother's face, Ryuan thought of something. Worry then became evident on his face. He also became silent. After a few seconds, this guy suddenly apologized to RMC. And that was because he felt guilty for having his older brother risk his life every first day of the month while he was just here enjoying all the best things in life. But this gloomy attitude was really not needed for today. Ryuman quickly tapped his shoulder. He then assured him that Ryuan doesn't need to feel down because he would surely come back every time. And to clear the atmosphere, RMC invited his brother to eat at the Korean place on the second floor. While waiting for Ryuan, RMC's phone rang and he checked it. He saw that young man had finally noticed that he had already moved to another place. He also decided to ignore his calls as they will never be meeting in real life again. But it will be different in the other world. Their fate was destined to meet again. The day after moving in, Ryuman was still yawning as he walked out from his room. He then saw his younger brother having himself ready to go out. This guy revealed that he just ordered some rice cakes, so he will be going to grab them. Ryuan's statement confused RMC. Why rice cakes? This event hasn't occurred before. Regressing didn't mean that all things would happen the same way, but it still intrigued Ryuman. He then asked his younger brother the reason why he bought some rice cakes. And it was revealed that Ryuan had planned to give it to their new neighbors. This action had really been a common courtesy for Koreans. RMC also thought that it was really not a bad idea to be a good neighbor. Ryuan was then commended for his good thinking. Ryuan was about to go out, but then RMC suggested that he should go with him and hand the rice cakes together. And just like that, the two of them started ringing the doorbells of their neighbors. They also introduced themselves and greeted them with their warm and sweet smiles. The first neighbor to open up was this old lady. She quickly noticed that these two were siblings because they really looked alike. The rice cakes were then given. This was the start of them having a great relationship with their neighbors. Ryuan has displayed his good manners towards the strangers that were in front of him. This act then continued for a while. Ryuan would always wear a smile while handling those rice cakes. And that was the same for RMC. This kid even returned the favor and politely accepted the rice cake. After a while, there's only one place left. And it was on the 44th floor. These two were eager to finish everything so they could rest. And while heading towards the last neighbor, RMC shared that the person who owned the floor bought both the 44th and 45th. That meant that whoever this person was should be at least mega rich. RMC then tried remembering the details, and all he could recall was that the person who lives here was a celebrity. Ryuan pressed the doorbell, but no one was answering. He thought that maybe they were not inside. And since they were already here, it wouldn't hurt to try again. But after a few more seconds, Ryuan gave up. He was just about to suggest that they should just go back to their house, but he noticed something. This guy had recognized someone that was coming in their direction. The person that the two brothers saw was none other than the most famous celebrity in the whole Korea right now. This lady right here was Seo Rin. And she was considered to be one of the most beautiful actresses in the whole country.